Welcome to an online guide for the Partnership Checklist approach. This resource may prove a useful tool for use in local advice services and financial inclusion partnerships. This tool has been developed through the Money Advice Outcomes project at the Improvement Service. Collaborative gain can take many forms, from sharing information, joint marketing, coordinating activity, through to joint management of resources. This will usually require a change of focus from the process and structure to achieving a common purpose. Collaborative gain is obtained when organisations or part of organisations achieve more in terms of value creation for specified customers or stakeholders through enhanced or additional services or reduced costs by collaborating than would have been achieved otherwise. Collaboration may be a one-off or a continuing arrangement, and it doesn't necessarily require partnership agreements or partnership arrangements. Collaborative gain should be designed at the start of a collaboration, not hoped for at the end. If there is no upfront basis for collaborative gain, then don't set up a partnership. If there's no potential, don't change. The Money Advice Outcomes project team engaged with a wide range of key stakeholders across Scotland's local authority areas to try to identify the range of advice forums and partnerships to scope out that level of activity of partnership working with financial inclusion partners. It is clear that a varying degree of activity takes place across the advice sector partnership working, which includes various networks and wide variety of financial inclusion and advice partners. The Money Advice Outcomes project has attempted to capture this knowledge and learning across Scotland, and it will continue to publish materials to its website, include details in future newsletters, and also post to the Knowledge Hub. This information may be seen in a variety of case studies, various webinar learning events, reports and publications. Please keep a lookout on the Improvement Service events webpage for upcoming webinar sessions. You may wish to take this opportunity to sign up for the Improvement Service newsletter as another way of keeping informed and a link for accessing future publications. A summary report of the Advice Service Financial Inclusion Partnerships and Advice Forums will be made available with a map to show the geographical spread of activity. The Partnership Checklist approach may be found to be a useful tool for self-assessing the strength of the partnerships and a basis to develop from. Following the publication of a case study for how Dundee advice workers use the Knowledge Hub, we have seen an increase in the number of users, new users to the Knowledge Hub, and an increase in the requests for support from Improvement Service staff to train various networks and advice partners on the use of the Knowledge Hub. This is something which you can access for free through the Knowledge Management team, who are happy to provide talks with staff, training and awareness sessions and ongoing support to help develop the use of the Knowledge Hub and increase that partnership working. The Partnership Checklist approach. The Partnership Checklist approach aims to give organisations a tool by which to try to self-assess how effective the partnership is by applying a certain methodology. It offers organisations a robust, structured, tested, systematic approach to change and improvement planning. It is flexible and can be implemented in a way which best suits the organisation. Background to the Partnership Checklist approach. The Partnership Checklist self-assessment is used extensively at the Improvement Service, and this is used through community planning partnerships, various boards, thematic groups, supporting that structure level within third sector interfaces as part of the whole community planning improvement programme, national programmes, violence against women, and the Getting It Right for Every Child programme. Based on the success of the checklist approach and its ability to support any group of people to develop an improvement plan together. So what is the checklist approach? The checklist approach can help with some of the practical challenges around self-assessment, especially around time and resources. The checklist approach will reduce the resource required from the service in relation to undertaking self-assessment, making the process more inclusive and helping to reduce the impact of the improvement activity by identifying performance measures as part of the process. What it does, it helps to identify strengths and areas for improvement. It helps to be inclusive and practical. It develops an improvement plan which is owned by the service, and it helps to inform the strategic improvement agenda. On screen now is a standard self-assessment timeline. This sample timeline shows the self-assessment journey from the beginning to the end. This is key for sharing the dates of sessions with the team and should be used at every session so that participants know the time commitment for them and how long the process will take. It's easier if participants block out the required dates from the outset. The scoping meeting. On screen now is a sample step-by-step guide for what is required at each step of the process. The aim of the scoping meeting is to meet with the head of service, a service manager or lead officer to discuss the process, populate the self-assessment timeline of dates and agree the distribution list for the checklists. Who should issue these checklists? For me that would normally be the service lead. The service will also make the arrangements with regard to the venue requirements, etc. The awareness session. On screen now is a guide of what is required at this stage of the process. The aim of the awareness session is to provide participants with an introduction from the head of service or service manager to start the self-assessment off. It could be the chair of the partnership that would do that. An overview of what is involved. The key dates they will be required to attend the session. A practical explanation of the checklist and how to complete it. It will also outline the aims and objectives of the self-assessment. Who should be there? Everyone taking part in the self-assessment should be there, plus the service manager of the service or the chair of the partnership to help introduce the session. How long will it last? It will usually last around 30 to 45 minutes. What's the format? Usually it would be in the form of a presentation with type of questions, or this can be done by an online video if that's required and more suitable. What's next? As soon soon as possible after the awareness session, the online checklist will be issued with an agreed deadline for completion. It's extremely important that everyone completes this, as this will provide the basis for the consensus session. Evidence gathering. To gather evidence for the self-assessment, an online checklist is distributed to all of the participants. This checklist will need to be set up online by the self-assessment facilitators. The Improvement Service uses Smart Survey to issue the online checklist to participants. Participants will then have 3 weeks to complete the checklist. This can be done in more than one sitting. Reminders should be sent out during the agreed timescale to further encourage a high response rate. After the agreed timescale, the checklist will close and a report can be created. The self-assessment team will then use this report to identify the main strengths and areas for improvement from the partnership which are coming out of the feedback from the stakeholders. These will provide the basis for the consensus session. At this point, the responsibilities of the self-assessment facilitators are to create and distribute the online checklists, create a report and gather the results. Use the report to identify the main strengths and areas for improvement. Reaching consensus. On screen now is a guide as to what is required at this stage of the process. The consensus session usually will last for approximately 3 hours, and everyone involved in the self-assessment should attend. The first part of the consensus session is to reach consensus on the improvement areas. The aim of the consensus session is to review the checklist report and identify the main areas for improvement. This process is structured using cooperative learning techniques, which involves splitting the participants into 3 smaller groups, or whichever is more relevant. Each group will be given different sections of the checklist to work through and identify the main areas that they feel are for improvement in that section. The second stage of the consensus session is about prioritisation. Once the main areas for improvement have been identified for each of the sections of the checklist, a prioritisation exercise will take place using a dotmocracy to use the top 6 or so priorities. A dotmocracy is a fun group activity used to help participants recognise the collective opinions, which allows for a quick visual presentation of what the main priorities are. The improvement planning session. Working with the top 6 or so priorities identified in the consensus section, the aim of the improvement planning section is to try to translate those priorities into an improvement plan by working through the benefits realisation framework, which is on screen now. This will cover the following for each of the priorities. What actions are required to implement the improvement action? Are there any risks, costs or resources for implementing the improvement action? An indication of these is sufficient and full details can be followed up later. What are the anticipated completion timescales? Who will lead on the improvement action? What performance measures will show how the improvement action has been implemented? And finally, what will be the overall outcome once the improvement action has been implemented. Everyone who was at the consensus session should participate in the improvement planning session. It will take no longer than 2 hours. The improvement plan. The information completed during the improvement planning session can easily be translated into the improvement plan. Normally, minimal work will be required to complete any gaps from the improvement planning session or to strengthen some sections. Perhaps some follow-up with participants or managers from the service may be required. Once this has been done, the improvement plan will be complete and the hard work begins in terms of taking this forward. It's good practice for some of the assessment team to present the improvement plan back to the head of service or various service managers. So this tutorial has covered all the steps in the partnership checklist approach. The steps are getting started with the self-assessment, the scoping meeting, the awareness session, evidence gathering, reaching consensus, prioritisation, and improvement planning. Hopefully you will have found this online guide useful, but if you have any questions, please just get in touch. The contact details for the Money Advice Outcomes team can be seen on screen now. Thank you for listening.